Imagine a day like any other. The sun rises, traffic flows, and airplanes trace white lines across a clear blue sky. Suddenly, without warning, chaos erupts. A series of catastrophic events unfolds across the globe, not through the thunder of explosions or the smoke of burning buildings, but through a silent, invisible influence. Imagine a disaster on the scale of 9/11, but with no discernible cause. The pilots of hijacked planes make fatal errors, air traffic controllers misdirect flights, and security personnel at critical infrastructure sites simply step aside. In the aftermath, investigations find no bombs, no cyber attacks, and no evidence of coercion. The individuals involved can only report moments of confusion, a lapse in judgment, or a sudden, inexplicable urge. This is the terrifying possibility presented by a new and emerging threat, the stealth brain-computer interface. This scenario, while sounding like science fiction, is inching closer to the realm of possibility. The weapons of this hypothetical future war are not forged from steel or explosives, but from algorithms and electromagnetic waves. They target not buildings or computer networks, but the human mind itself. The core idea is the remote, covert manipulation of a person's thoughts, perceptions, and decisions without their knowledge or consent. This form of attack would be the ultimate act of terror, as it leaves behind no physical evidence, no digital footprint, and no clear enemy to hold accountable. The victims themselves would become unwilling instruments, their own minds turned against them to execute a devastating plan, all while believing they were acting of their own free will. The concept of mind control has long been a staple of dystopian stories, but advances in neuroscience and technology are forcing us to confront it as a serious security concern. We are on the precipice of an era where the brain, the very seat of our consciousness, could become a new battlefield. The ability to subtly influence a key decision-maker, to make them hesitate for a crucial second, to misinterpret vital information, or to feel a sudden wave of panic, could be enough to trigger a market crash, a power grid failure, or a military conflict. The threat is not that our minds will be violently seized, but that they will be gently nudged in a catastrophic direction without anyone ever knowing why. Understanding this invisible threat is the first step toward defending against it. We must explore the technologies that could make such an attack possible and confront the difficult questions they raise. How can we protect the sanctity of human thought in an age of advancing neurotechnology? What happens when the line between our own intentions and an external influence becomes blurred? The challenge is to navigate the incredible promise of brain-computer interfaces for medicine and human enhancement, while simultaneously building safeguards against their potential misuse. The security of the 21st century may depend not only on protecting our borders and our data, but on protecting the integrity of the human mind itself. At its core, a brain-computer interface, or BCI, is a communication pathway directly between a brain and an external device. It is a technology that translates the brain's electrical signals into commands that can control software or hardware, and in some cases, it can even send information back into the brain. For decades, this technology has been a beacon of hope, primarily developed for medical purposes. Early BCIs were invasive, requiring surgeons to implant electrodes directly onto the brain's surface. These devices have achieved miracles, allowing individuals with severe paralysis to move robotic arms, type messages on a screen, or even regain a sense of touch, all by simply thinking about the action. These powerful tools have restored a degree of autonomy and communication to people who had lost it. However, the field is rapidly evolving beyond these surgical implants. The new frontier is non-invasive BCIs, devices that can read and sometimes write to the brain from outside the skull. Instead of surgery, these systems use sensors placed on the scalp or in a wearable headset to detect neural activity. Technologies like electroencephalography or EEG have been used for years to monitor brainwaves, but modern non-invasive BCIs are becoming far more sophisticated and precise. They aim to achieve the high-fidelity communication of an implant without the associated risks of surgery. This shift is lowering the barrier to entry, making neurotechnology more accessible and paving the way for applications beyond the purely medical, venturing into areas like gaming, cognitive enhancement, and military use. The true game-changer in this domain is the development of bidirectional interfaces. A read-only BCI simply listens to the brain's signals, much like a microphone records sound. A right BCI, on the other hand, can deliver information or stimuli directly to the brain. A bidirectional BCI can do both, creating a seamless real-time feedback loop. This means a user could not only control a drone with their thoughts, but also receive sensory data from the drone, like visual or tactical information, fed directly back into their brain's neural pathways. This two-way street of information is where the power and the potential danger of modern BCIs truly lies, transforming them from simple controllers into genuine extensions of the human mind. As these technologies become more powerful and less invasive, their potential applications expand exponentially. Imagine controlling your smart home with a thought, learning a new skill by having the information subtly patterned into your neural activity, or communicating silently with a colleague across a room. These are the promises that drive BCI research forward. But this same progress also opens the door to more sinister possibilities. If a device can write information into the brain to help someone learn, could it also write information to confuse or deceive them? This is the fundamental question that brings us to the concept of a stealth BCI, a technology that could operate without a bulky headset, influencing the mind invisibly and without consent. At the forefront of this technological leap is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, an agency of the United States Department of Defense responsible for developing emerging technologies for military use. DARPA has a long history of funding ambitious, high-risk, high-reward projects that have led to innovations like the Internet and GPS. One of its most forward-looking initiatives today is the Next Generation Non-Surgical Neurotechnology Program, known as N3. The program's explicit goal is to develop high-performance, bidirectional BCIs that work without the need for surgery. This research is aimed at providing United States service members with the ability to control advanced military systems, such as drone swarms or complex cyber defense networks, using only their thoughts. The N3 program is not pursuing a single technological path, but is instead exploring a variety of innovative and highly advanced methods to communicate with the brain. One approach involves using near-infrared light, which can pass through the skull to detect neural activity and potentially modulate it. Another team is working with focused ultrasound, using acoustic waves to transmit and receive information from specific brain regions with a high degree of precision. Perhaps the most futuristic approach involves the use of specially engineered viruses or chemical compounds that would deliver genetic material to specific neurons, causing them to produce proteins that are sensitive to magnetic or electric fields. An external headset could then use these fields to communicate with the targeted cells non-invasively. The ultimate vision of the N3 program is a wearable device that could be put on and taken off as easily as a helmet, yet provide a level of interaction with technology that was previously unimaginable. A soldier could, for instance, silently coordinate with their squad, receive real-time intelligence directly into their sensory cortex, or multitask at a speed far beyond normal human capability. While the intended purpose is to enhance the effectiveness and safety of military personnel, the technologies being developed are inherently dual use. The same innovations that allow a soldier to control a complex machine could, in the wrong hands, be repurposed to control a human being, making the N3 program a critical case study in the power and peril of neurotechnology. The existence of programs like N3 confirms that the concept of a high-fidelity, non-invasive BCI is not mere speculation. It is a tangible goal being actively pursued by one of the world's most advanced research agencies. The breakthroughs from this program are expected to have profound implications, not just for the military but for civilian life as well, likely filtering down into consumer and medical products. But it also acts as a stark warning. If a government agency can develop this technology for its own purposes, it is only a matter of time before other actors, rival nations, corporations, or even terrorist organizations, seek to develop or replicate it for theirs, potentially turning a tool of defense into a weapon of undetectable coercion. The idea of a truly stealth BCI, one that operates without a visible headset or any physical attachment, hinges on the revolutionary field of nanotechnology. Nanotechnology involves manipulating matter on an atomic and molecular scale, creating materials and devices with extraordinary properties. In the context of neurotechnology, this could mean creating microscopic sensors or transducers that are small enough to travel through the bloodstream, cross the blood-brain barrier, and position themselves near targeted neurons. These nanobots or nanotransducers would essentially act as tiny wireless antennae inside the brain, forming an invisible bridge between the mind and an external control system. This is the technology that could make the leap from a wearable device to a completely covert interface. One such concept, explored in DARPA's Brainstorms project, involves developing nanotransducers that can convert the brain's natural electrical signals into magnetic ones. Because magnetic fields can pass through biological tissue and bone without interference, these signals could then be read remotely by a highly sensitive detector. The reverse could also be true. An external device could generate a focused magnetic field to influence the nanotransducers, which would then convert that signal back into an electrical or chemical stimulus to affect neural activity. This would create a bi-directional link without any physical wires or surgical implants, a ghost in the machine that could be activated and controlled from a distance without the target's awareness. The delivery mechanism for such a technology is another area of concern. These nanoparticles could potentially be delivered covertly through various means. They could be aerosolized and inhaled, absorbed through the skin via a seemingly harmless substance, or even ingested in food or water. Once inside the body, they would be designed to navigate to the brain and self-assemble into a functional neural interface. A Palo Alto startup named Subsense, which emerged in early 2025, is developing a similar concept using biocompatible nanoparticles designed to cross the blood-brain barrier and act as high-fidelity antennae. While their stated goal is for beneficial medical communication, the underlying technology demonstrates the feasibility of this covert delivery method. This combination of nanotechnology and remote signaling is what makes a stealth BCI a uniquely dangerous threat. Unlike a conventional weapon, it could be deployed silently and without a trace. The target would not feel an injection or see a device. They would simply be exposed to an invisible agent. The external controller could be located anywhere in the world, using sophisticated transmitters and receivers to send subtle signals that nudge the target's perceptions or decisions. The victim would have no reason to suspect that their thoughts were not their own. They might feel unusually stressed, confused, or irritable, but they would likely attribute these feelings to their circumstances, never suspecting the invisible technological puppeteer pulling their neural strings. To fully grasp the gravity of this threat, let us imagine a plausible attack scenario. So picture this. A well-funded state-sponsored terrorist group has acquired or developed a stealth BCI system based on magnetic nanotransducers. Their target isn't just a single location, but the global financial system itself. Over several months, they covertly deploy these nanoparticles to a handful of key individuals around the world. We're talking about a senior air traffic controller at a major international airport, a lead engineer at a critical power grid facility, and a high-frequency trader at a dominant investment bank. The delivery is completely untraceable. Maybe it's through a contaminated surface at a conference, or even an aerosol spray in a public space. The nanoparticles travel to the brain and just lie dormant, quietly waiting for an activation signal. The attack is scheduled for a specific day, and then, at the designated time, the terrorist cell, operating from some remote and hidden location, sends a series of precisely timed electromagnetic pulses. The air traffic controller, guiding several jumbo jets on approach, suddenly feels this overwhelming sense of confusion. For a few critical minutes, the radar screen seems to swim before their eyes, and they misread altitude data, directing two planes onto a collision course. At the same moment, the power grid engineer, who's overseeing a delicate load balancing operation, is overcome by a wave of manufactured anxiety. They misinterpret a standard alert as a catastrophic failure and initiate an emergency shutdown, which triggers a cascading blackout across an entire region. Simultaneously, the high-frequency trader, whose algorithms execute millions of transactions per second, is hit with a subtle cognitive manipulation. The BCI doesn't seize control, but instead, it amplifies their brain's natural risk-taking impulses, while subtly impairing their ability to process negative market indicators. Driven by a sudden, inexplicable feeling of confidence, they override their system's safeguards and execute a series of massive, destabilizing trades. The combination of a major aviation disaster, a widespread power outage, and a sudden, irrational shock to the stock market triggers a global panic. Economies spiral, and public trust in vital infrastructure collapses overnight. In the ensuing investigation, authorities are just left baffled. The air traffic controller is diagnosed with a transient stress-induced episode. The engineer is blamed for human error under pressure. The trader is fired for reckless behavior. There's no malware on their computers, no evidence of blackmail, and no trace of any weapon. The nanoparticles in their brains are simply too small and too novel to be detected by standard medical scans or autopsies. The attack is ultimately deemed a tragic and unbelievable coincidence, a perfect storm of human failure. The perpetrators have achieved their goal of causing mass disruption without ever firing a shot or leaving a single piece of evidence. This is, really, the blueprint for the perfect crime, executed not in the physical world, but in the cognitive realm. One of the most alarming aspects of the emerging BCI threat is, honestly, the profound lack of rules and regulations to govern it. While the technology is advancing at an exponential rate, the legal and ethical frameworks that should be guiding its development are lagging far behind. This creates a dangerous regulatory gray zone, a sort of lawless frontier where innovation just outpaces oversight. Bad actors, whether they're rogue states, terrorist organizations, or unethical corporations, can exploit this vacuum to develop and potentially deploy dangerous neurotechnologies with little fear of legal consequence. This gap between technological capability and regulatory control represents one of our greatest vulnerabilities in the age of neurowarfare. In the United States, the regulatory landscape is fragmented and, quite frankly, inadequate. The Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, has clear authority over BCIs that are intended for medical use, like devices to treat paralysis or epilepsy. However, its jurisdiction becomes really murky when dealing with non-medical applications. BCIs developed for cognitive enhancement, gaming, or, most critically, military purposes do not fall neatly under the FDA's purview. This means that groundbreaking research like DARPA's N3 program proceeds without the same level of public safety oversight that a new medical device would require, creating a significant blind spot for technologies with obvious dual-use potential. The situation isn't any better across the Atlantic. In the United Kingdom, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, or MHRA, similarly focuses its attention on clinical devices, leaving non-medical neurotechnologies largely unregulated. In the European Union, the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, offers robust protections for personal data, which could be a starting point for safeguarding neural data. However, GDPR was not designed to address the unique challenges posed by BCIs. It does not explicitly cover the act of writing information into the brain or grapple with the ethical nightmare of manipulated thoughts and actions. There is currently no comprehensive EU-wide legislation that directly confronts the security and human rights implications of advanced BCIs. This lack of domestic regulation is compounded by a near-total absence of international agreements. We have treaties to limit the proliferation of nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons, but there are no such conventions for neuroweapons. There are no international standards for BCI security, no protocols for ethical testing, and no shared mechanisms for monitoring the development of potentially hostile neurotechnologies. This means that a country or organization could develop a covert BCI weapon without violating any specific international law. This global regulatory failure leaves the door wide open for a neurotechnology arms race, where the first to master this technology could gain an unimaginable and destabilizing advantage over others. Confronting the threat of stealth BCIs really requires a proactive and multi-layered defense strategy, one that integrates legal, technological, and diplomatic solutions. Waiting for a catastrophic attack to occur before we act is just not an option. The first and most crucial line of defense is the immediate development of robust regulatory frameworks. Governments in the USA, UK, and Europe must work together to close the existing loopholes. This means expanding the authority of agencies like the FDA and MHRA to cover all BCIs, not just medical ones. Furthermore, data privacy laws like GDPR must be updated to specifically define neural data as a category of personal information deserving the highest level of protection, and to establish clear laws around the concept of cognitive liberty, or the right to mental self-determination. Beyond domestic laws, we need strong international agreements. The global community must come together to establish a treaty on neurotechnology, similar to the conventions governing other classes of advanced weaponry. This treaty should set clear boundaries on the development and use of BCIs, explicitly banning covert and coercive neurotechnologies. It would require signatories to be transparent about their research programs, submit to international inspections, and establish shared protocols for ensuring the security of all BCI devices. Such an agreement would create a global norm against the weaponization of the human mind and provide a legal basis for holding violators accountable on the world stage, discouraging a secret neuro-arms race before it can truly begin. Technological defenses are also paramount. If the threat is technological, so too must be the solution. We must invest heavily in research and development aimed at detecting and neutralizing covert BCI attacks. This could involve creating advanced neuromonitoring systems, perhaps using artificial intelligence, to analyze an individual's brain activity in real time. These AI systems could be trained to recognize the subtle signatures of external manipulation, distinguishing the brain's natural signals from anomalous patterns indicative of an attack. Generative AI could also be used to model thousands of potential attack scenarios, helping us anticipate new threats and develop effective countermeasures before they are ever deployed in the real world. Finally, strengthening oversight and promoting ethical development are absolutely essential. Public-private partnerships are key. Companies and research institutions developing BCI technology, including startups like Subsense and government-funded programs like DARPA's N3, must operate with transparency and adhere to strict ethical guidelines overseen by independent bioethical panels. These panels, made up of scientists, ethicists, security experts, and public representatives, should have the authority to review and, if necessary, halt research that poses an unacceptable risk. By fostering a culture of responsible innovation, we can guide the development of BCI technology toward its benefits while actively working to mitigate its dangers, making sure that progress does not come at the cost of our security and freedom. It's crucial to remember that for every frightening scenario involving brain-computer interfaces, there's an equally inspiring story of hope and progress. This technology is not inherently malicious. It's a powerful tool with a profound dual-use nature. While we absolutely must be vigilant about the risks, we must not let fear stifle the incredible potential that BCIs hold for humanity. The same technology that could be used to manipulate a mind can also be used to liberate one. The ability to read neural signals is already allowing people who are completely paralyzed and unable to speak to communicate with their loved ones for the first time in years, simply by decoding their intended words from their brain activity. The medical benefits extend far beyond communication. BCIs are showing immense promise in treating a wide range of neurological and mental health conditions. For patients with Parkinson's disease, deep brain stimulation, a form of BCI, can alleviate tremors and restore motor control. For those suffering from severe treatment-resistant depression, targeted neural stimulation can lift the fog and provide relief where no other therapy has worked. Researchers are also exploring how BCIs can help restore vision to the blind by sending signals from a camera directly to the visual cortex, or help amputees control advanced prosthetic limbs that feel and move like their own. These are not distant dreams. They're active areas of research that are changing lives today. Beyond medicine, BCIs promise to revolutionize how we interact with the world and with each other. The cognitive enhancements sought by DARPA for soldiers could one day translate into civilian applications that help us learn faster, focus better, and manage complex information more effectively. Imagine being able to control smart devices in your home with a simple thought, or collaborating on a complex design project by sharing ideas telepathically with your team. These advancements could unlock new levels of human creativity, productivity, and connection, fundamentally reshaping society in positive ways. The goal of BCI development is not to control people, but to empower them by overcoming biological limitations. This incredible promise is precisely why a balanced approach is so essential. A blanket ban on BCI research out of fear would be a tragic loss, denying millions of people potential cures and enhancements that could dramatically improve their quality of life. The challenge is not to stop progress, but to guide it responsibly. We must separate the technology itself from its potential applications. By establishing strong ethical guardrails, demanding transparency from developers, and creating robust security protocols, we can cultivate the beneficial uses of BCIs while building strong defenses against their misuse. The path forward requires us to embrace the promise while diligently managing the peril. We stand at a crossroads. The path of neurotechnology stretches before us, branching into two very different futures. One path leads to a world where BCIs heal the sick, empower the disabled, and unlock new potentials of the human mind. The other leads to a darker world, where this same technology becomes an invisible weapon capable of sowing chaos and eroding the very foundation of human autonomy. The direction we take is not predetermined by the technology itself, but by the choices we make today. The specter of a stealth BCI attack is a wake-up call, urging us to act proactively and thoughtfully to ensure that this powerful tool serves humanity rather than subverting it. The first step on this path is acknowledging the reality of the threat. The idea of mind control must move from the pages of science fiction into the serious discussions of policymakers, security agencies, and the public. We must foster a global conversation about the implications of BCI technology, raising awareness of both its potential for good and its potential for harm. This dialogue is essential for building the political will needed to implement the necessary safeguards. We cannot afford to be complacent or to dismiss these concerns as futuristic fantasy. The research is happening now, the technology is advancing now, and the time to build our defenses is now, before the first invisible shot is ever fired. Ultimately, the goal is to create an ecosystem of responsible innovation. This means supporting the scientists and engineers who are working to cure diseases and improve lives, while simultaneously holding them and their funders accountable to the highest ethical and security standards. It means investing in defensive technologies with the same vigor that we invest in offensive capabilities. It requires a partnership between government, industry, and academia to create a future where BCIs are safe, secure, and aligned with fundamental human rights. The right to control one's own thoughts, cognitive liberty, must be recognized as an inalienable right that deserves legal and technological protection. The journey ahead will be complex, filled with difficult ethical questions and technological challenges. But it is a journey we must undertake. By supporting the development of clear regulations, advocating for international cooperation, and championing a culture of ethical oversight, we can steer the development of brain-computer interfaces toward a future of incredible possibility. Let us work to ensure that when we look back at this moment, we see it not as the dawn of an invisible threat, but as the moment humanity chose to wisely and safely unlock the potential of the mind, securing it as a force for good for all generations to come. The choice is ours, and the time to make it is now.